Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Just to reassure the audience, Chief Sales Officer of VHCloud, I can promise one thing. It's not about a sales pitch, right? I'm Executive Director out of VHCloud, and I'm very pleased to be with you. I thank the organization, obviously VMware and Laurent, for the invitation. I'm going to address a few points here, just basically because we've been put in front of the bus at some point out of VHCloud, representing this company that is from time to time the flagship of the sovereignty or some way of expressions of sovereignty. We're not alone. There are plenty of European companies that are actually innovating to aim to help the European, but also the global economy to move to the right digitalizations. The reason why we are so keen talking about sovereignty is because this word sovereignty actually appeared a few years ago, but our keyword is just freedom. And cloud is everywhere today. Cloud is today something that is at the core of every innovations. You are putting a lot of bets on the future thanks to the technology, but everything will be and is rooted in the cloud. If you think about the last few innovations, whether it's for the pandemic, think about the amount of technology that it took in order to get there. And everything was done thanks to the cloud. So how come can we foresee the future and think about what is it that we want to go for with a technology that we do not control? Like, I apologize, maybe I'm French, I'm getting too close to the lunchtime. Let me make the analogy of lunch, right? It's about food. Food is an essential need, right? And here we're talking about the fact that there are only 5 kitchens in the world. I'm asking you, regulators, lawmakers, business decision makers, citizens, to decide to cook your own food. So we're talking about a day here, right? It's a day of the sovereign cloud, but it's a process. It's a long process where we have to learn again, how the technology is made, layer by layer. We have at some point to give up on just consuming it. This red bullet on your apps that immediately is driving instinctively your attention and so on. You have so much neuroscience behind that to trigger your attention that it's become a habit. So the purpose today is really to look into things where, and I'm trying to see how it works, yeah. Really, we want to see how we can get back in control. And sovereign is the consequence, fine. Let's talk it also freedom. I heard the word open. Yes. Because when it's open, you can decide, you can be in control. And the purpose today is really to be about getting back in control of our data, so we have the choice to decide how we can go about it, to leverage the technology, to sell the technology, to use the technology in the most the smartest manner possible. So let me give you a few things about the definitions, and Laurent called on the definitions of sovereignty. I will offer the one. Okay, it's made of 3 things. The first one is that there should be any compromise with data sovereignty. That is, that Europe has been at the forefront of regulations of data. We should respect that, and we should stick to it. There can't be any compromise with this fact. The second one that is equally mandatory is the technical sovereignty. I think cloud is either the worst or the best marketing inventions word. Like, there is nothing that is more cloudy than the cloud. Like, apologize. Okay, the sales hat is back on track here. The famous sentence that you've been hearing from salespeople in the tech industry telling you, oh, this is transparent for you, Mr. Customer. Well, this is no longer acceptable, right? We have to understand that. We have to get back in control of each and every layer that are leading to the usage that you want to achieve. Whether we are going to consume this usage in an automated manner and not rebuild it ourselves, that's fine. But we need to understand it. It has to be very transparent. So that's what we call the technology, sovereignty and independence. And finally, the operational. Like, who is in charge of it? How does it work? Where it is done? The first discussions like 3 years ago about this famous Data Act conflict and so on was because people were thinking that because it's not on the European soil, or because it is on the European soil, it's sovereign. Well, no, guess what? The data is flying over the Atlantic and more, every day in nanoseconds, and you don't know about it, but it's okay, right? Because it's transparent for you, Mr. Customer. So we have, again, to get back in those control. So getting back to the definition of sovereignty, no compromise with the data, the technology sovereignty, that is we understand each layer of the thing and we can read through and we make decisions accordingly, and finally we understand who is in charge of it. Now, with this in mind, you see a lot of pressures and coming left and right to rule and the game and so on. And just giving you a few things that we thought were interesting. You have few tailwinds. The first one is what we call the external tailwind. Is basically that we see that Europe and politics have started to regulate. By the way, it's not only a European topic, right? If you think about Russia, way before everything, right? They were one of the first one in Europe to decide to forbid the process of personal data outside of their country, which was back then, as I was working in market research industry, a big thing, like whether you are in Russia or you're not, basically, which was kind of a first major step, in my opinion. You have also regulations that are coming from India, and we have many countries. But one thing that is interesting is that 137 countries, according to a study made by Accenture, actually have declared that data protection and sovereignty are now something that is very important in the way they foresee the future. Similarly, 84% of organizations that have been surveyed in this piece of work have decided that the new aspects of data sovereignty is now impacting the way they are making decisions and regulating accordingly. So you see that you have this political pressure, which is a good thing, and on the other hand, you have a growing concern from the citizens and the users. Every citizens and users now, according to various polls, and I would just get the one from Capgemini, close to 87% of organizations are now having on their map or production roadmap that they have to take and onboard this sovereign topic. Still, this is an issue, right? Because actually, it called for building solutions, right? Because you have growing concerns, you have to push from the politicians. But on the other hand, how can we build concrete solutions and so on? And there is one thing here that is extremely important, is that we can't do it alone. It's not like a one-man job or one company job. It has to be something that has to come from a lot of players, and we want to offer a few things here. The first one is obviously the infrastructures. I heard earlier that the infrastructure as a service was a commodity. Fully agree. Still, this is the foundation. So if you want to build something, right, the foundations are super important. So we can treat them and in an economic environment as a commodity. Still, it has to come with something that is very clear and transparent and understanding. And guess what? There are many players that are European players that are fantastic entrepreneurs for the IaaS aspect of things. So we have the possibility to really build up the famous stack of data that we want to go for, thanks to the European ecosystem. The second thing is that the open source. The open source technology is something that we should embrace, and that's calling again from making the effort of creating your own kitchens or our own kitchens, but the educations and the way we train young students or new professionals or even veterans to open source technology is extremely important. Open source technology is the ultimate weapon of freedom. If you think about it, there is no concerns about black box or the famous Mr. Customer is transparent for you. There is nothing cloudy here. It's just written somewhere, obviously enriched by many that are contributing and therefore ensuring the control. So that's another aspect that could be also leveraged. And finally, there is this concept of trusted partners. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not at ease with the word trust, right? There is nothing more blurry than trust. We all have our own definition of trust. Some may have some mantras or taglines about how they decide about trust and so on. But there are certifications. There are objective criteria that we can follow to indeed validate a partner that will be trustworthy and that will enable the cloud migrations, the digital embracement, so you can move ahead and start to innovate. I think the partnership that we have with VMware, and again, it's not a sales pitch, but illustrates exactly a lot of things that we have decided to go for. As you know, in France, you have strong regulations in terms of cloud. There was a few initiatives. I will just briefly mention some of them afterwards, but very early on, there was a certification that was set to fuel the digital strategy of the government. This certification is called SecNum Cloud. It's one of the most protective and coming up with a lot of security, immunity criteria. And just to demonstrate that sovereignty is really about freedom, the solution is really about foundations that are coming from a European cloud player, that is OVH Cloud, that we orchestrate in our own data centers with our staff in Europe. And we are putting a software that is VMware on top of it in order to run the productions of the most critical aspects of our government or the sensitive informations of our large industry. This is what I would call technology sovereignty. There is no compromise with the data, and we have a clear understanding of who is operating it. We can do it. And that's something that we are ready for, and it comes with openness and collaboration. So the complexity of things is that it goes very fast. Like, in the last 4 months, the hype of artificial intelligence is just crazy, right? It's just like as if you don't add AI at the end of your domain name, it's like you don't have a future in this business, right? It's crazy. Well, if you think about it, AI has been around for decades, right? Decades. But still, this is the hype. So we have to accelerate. Really, we have to accelerate. I heard about, and there was a very good question, thank you for asking this question about a date, right? And yeah, we have all the good ideas. I will mention few initiatives. We start workshop. Excuse me, but being part of an executive team, running a business, at some point you need to get things done. You need, not just good idea. Just do it. I remember one of my former CEO was always telling, I was coming to his office, I think I was trying to brag a bit, and say, I thought I had an idea and so on. And at some point he was fed up with my ideas, so he started to tell me, it's a good idea, do it. I decided to filter a bit my ideas, try to get for less, hopefully more impactful, but yeah, do it. So we have to accelerate here, and we know about the complexity. I think it's pretty well defined. The choices, pretty much everybody is clear. And the resources are there again. The European ecosystem is fantastic. I saw the name of all the attendees, and there are so many great companies in Europe with whom we are competing, but we believe we are part of the same ecosystem. And I think this is something that we should leverage way more. I will skip that to go to the, reality. So I mentioned the SecNum Cloud, which I think is a very good example, and I know there are other initiatives across Europe and even at the European level, and hopefully they will land pretty soon with the right level of compromise that will not become something blurry where each and everyone can call himself sovereign. I'm sorry, the privilege of not being politicians, I will be very frank with you, we do not consider all the initiatives that are coming with the hyperscalers, whether they call it Bleu in France, Sense, or else in other countries around Europe, as sovereign solution. They do not respond to our definition. There is no technology autonomy, not at all. It's a licensing program. It's just, and for some countries it could be fine. But this is not the right level of ambitions. Here again, you just decide to license the kitchen of someone else, but still getting the same food, while your aim is to get back in control of your plate. That's something that we believe here is important to keep in mind. That's not theory, that's reality. So it's urgent again to act and decide, so we do not leave the door open to some legal answer to something that is way bigger than just a legal problem. So I will mention few things that are ongoing here that I think are important and to keep an eye on. The European Alliance for Industrial Data, Edge and Cloud. was launched in July 21. This is important, and member states representative and relevant experts with the goal to strengthen the position of Europe. This is a very good forum here to continue to foster the ideas, but more importantly, to decide and act. Similarly, Gaia X, which in my opinion, is picturing well this concept of good idea, execution, and the time in between. This is also something still remain a very important forum where good ideas are shared and so on. Again, the execution is the key here, but still remains something important. We are waiting for key decisions, and we're just not waiting, part of the board since the beginning. We want to drive the right decision there. At the French level, maybe you're not aware, but there is a strong commitment from the government around the digital transformation. We call it in French CSF, which doesn't mean much in English, but basically it's a strategic committee of the digital industry. Our CEO, Michel Paulin, is leading this initiative upon the request of the French government, where all the industrial of the digital space are meeting in order to still define the roadmap of the transformation and understand, both how can we regain control of things, but also making sure that all users are satisfied, which is not a simple thing. When you are in France and you are working with a company like L'Oréal or Louis Vuitton, first market of L'Oréal and Louis Vuitton, United States of America. Second market, China. When you come to a debate about sovereignty to multinational companies that are having operations overseas that are so important, it's an issue, it's a challenge. So this is again something that we have to solve, but again, the transparency and the control of the technology, the fact that people can read through and make the decisions in full awareness of what's going on is the way to go, and this is what we are calling for. I would like to just conclude, because I think that we only have 1 minute left. The first thing that I really enjoyed from the initial discussions, I really value the fact that data sovereignty is also mandatory if we want to get back in control of our eco-sustainability trajectory. The fact that you understand the various layers, the fact that you understand how it's made, and not just why you are using it, is putting you in a position to also act upon your carbon footprint. Because you can choose the various ingredients. You know the origin. You can create something here that has truly an impact. If we decide to go for something that is fully baked and transparent, you don't know. And this is again another opportunity for blurry guidance, for blurry numbers, and then you realize that all of a sudden everybody is green. Well, guess what? It's kind of weird, no? Like, have you been recently to some trade fair event or whatever, conferences and everything? Everybody is green. Still, the issue of our planet is that you have more and more pollutions everywhere, but everybody is green. How can it be? Like, because it's again cloudy. It's not transparent. So I would call also for this sovereignty thing, also because you can get back in control of the destiny of the famous no plan B for the planet. So thank you again. This is about freedom. This is about making efforts, which is, in my opinion, the biggest challenge for any human being, because we have to change. We have to accept the fact that there is one kitchen that we want to build that is our own, and we've been used to use some kitchens from time to time, and it's not easy, but it's doable, it's possible. It takes collaborations, it takes decision, and it takes speed. And I'm confident, because this is always the half glass full, I'm confident we can do it because there is only goodwill, and I would like to thank the VMware to have this day, because even if it's only one day in the long process, the number of attendees and the prestigious audience shows that everybody is really on this agenda now, which makes me feel, and OVH Cloud, very confident. Thank you very much.
Sylvain, if you join me here briefly. I have questions for Sylvain, but before I do that, I asked people, yes, you sir in the back row. Lorena, gentleman there in the back row, with a microphone, please, or Sophia.
I think my
Give your name and, well, if you wait a second, sir, give your name and organization, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Alain Geritz. I work for Comdivision. I heard you say as a second pillar the importance of open source. I fully agree. I think it's very courageous to mention that on a day sponsored by VMware. I would like to know if you have any ideas around that, if you already implement that at OVH Cloud, or if you have any ideas what direction that could take for a sovereign cloud.
So yeah, I don't know if I'm courageous or stupid, but it's the first day, maybe I will not be invited for the second one. But I know Laurent for a while, and he knows me as well, so I speak from my heart. You know, when you work at OVH Cloud, you're not just a colleague. There is some sense of belief and commitment. With regards to the open source, yes. And again, back to freedom. We want to offer users, companies, the choice of embracing property systems like VMware. Like most of the time, companies have implemented VMware on their premises. They are migrating to the cloud, finding again VMware. Everybody's happy. But also the choice is, yes, to implement open source. So we are offering, I think we have close to now 100 services that are basically combinations of property systems that are accepting, because this is very important. VMware made the effort to accept, to detach the software from rooted cloud things. So the control is fully sent to another operator with the different infrastructures. So we are offering those property systems, but also a big range of open source, whether they are for database or else. There are plenty of solutions now, and this is what we want to offer to the market, the choice. And some companies are building up their stack solely on open source, which I think is very encouraging.
Okay, I'm being told, okay, so but very briefly, because I'm told we're running out of time, but go ahead, but as long as you ask a very brief question, please.
Emmanuel Finance Cancom. I like your analogy and the parallel, but don't you think there is a conflict between what we heard at the beginning, that we have regulators that are waited for the sign of the times and the actors to build the technology, etc., and you saying we are waiting for the definition and the regulation. So what is the signal that we will need, and who is the CEO who will order us to execute?
Well, I think it's a difficult question, but I think everybody can read the signs right now. Like, what kind of community are we if we have, for example, when was it? Last fall in the US, just the Senate ordering, or not ordering, but requesting NVIDIA not to sell to China. What kind of community are we if we hear the US Senate complaining about TikTok to look at the data of their teenagers, and us still considering, debating, what should be the definition of data sovereignty? I think it's, at the end of the day, it's common sense. And I think also, and I don't want to speak on behalf of other entrepreneurs and other companies here, but we are very vigilant on what's going on at the EU level and at the country level of all the territories where we are present. But if there is one thing that we learned is that we shouldn't wait for them. So we are going and proposing and offering. And believe me, there is a great ecosystem of tech companies across Europe that are similar-minded. And as we are regrouping forces and offering solutions to the market, companies are starting to pay attention, not waiting for the regulation to decide. But at some point, they will have to decide very quickly and with no compromise. Otherwise, we'll see another blue sense or whatever hybrid that will be, everybody is happy, but nobody is really in favor of it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sylvain. I'll let you go now. We need to move on.